So this is Mac Dillon, 1200 from Brazil. Shows up, fortunately. Are we going to get a King's Indian here? Potentially a Grinfeld? Both openings that have been favored by several world champions, or two of the most famous ones anyway, Bobby Fischer and Garry Kasparov. But one thing they never did is that they played e5 before castles, because usually you would have knight e4 here as a little tactic, winning the pawn back because of knight e4 and bishop e5. But in this case, f7 was hanging, and this meant that my Brazilian opponent has just lost a pawn for actually a very nice central pawn for very little compensation. So f4, fortifying the knight. Next, I want to go bishop e3 and possibly long castles. c6 is a move that very strong players would usually play out automatically here, by the way, just to take away the d5 square for my knight. Question is, do I want to go knight d5 check? I think then bishop d5, ed5, might have c6 then. Probably don't want to, so I'm just gonna develop instead. Now that he prevented long castles, I'm just going king f2. No reason to castle. The king is very, very safe here. c6 he does. Very good move. Again, taking control over the d5 square. And this is the advantage that black often has in the King's Indian, is that you can take control of the d5 square while the white pawn is already on c4 and the other one on e4. So you cannot actually control the d4 square as white, which means that in a lot of the positions where black goes e5 and you go d5, d5, and the pawn on e5 is not hanging, then the d4 square will potentially be weak for white, while the d5 square can be covered with a pawn from c6 as black. So that is one of the advantages of that opening. So I have a little tactic here. Knight with rook d8, check. King e7 was obviously the natural response there. It looks as though my rook will be driven back, but would have had rook takes b8, and then knight c6 check, takes b8 with a win of a piece. Now, however, after knight c6, this is more prosaic. I just win at least an exchange after knight c6 and rook a8. Obviously leaving me with a completely winning position. Next, I probably want to go c5 to open up even more and create at least one pass pawn on the queen side. Taking in c3 doesn't probably the best move, but it doesn't help that much in that regard, since c5 is still happening, and I'm still getting that pass pawn. I could have taken an a7 there as well, but c5 I think maybe even better, seeing as now after bc5 I do win the knight in e8 as well, and my opponent very respectfully resigned, which I appreciate. Um, with when you're relatively low rated, I don't at all mind if you play on either, but obviously resigning so that we can get to play even more people is also not something I mind.